Good evening, I'm Isaac Ben Ezra, host and co-producer of Conversations. Things are getting hot in town. Warrants are being written, bylaws are being considered, zoning restrictions are being put forth. We're going to hear all about that stuff when town meeting convenes around the end of April or the beginning of May. And I'm delighted to have a town meeting member and a guest to talk about one of those articles. Ben Grosscup, welcome. Congratulations on your re-election.
Oh, thank you, Isaac.
And my friend here is Jeff Napolitano.
Right. Thank you for having me.
From AFDC?
AFSC, the American Friends Service Committee.
It's a pleasure.
Right.
It's a real pleasure. We look forward to this discussion. Ben, why don't you lay the foundation? What is it about this warrant that people need to know about? And why is it so important that we address this national issue?
Well, Article 29 is addressing a major issue in our country right now around immigration and the rights of immigrants. Basically, there's a program called the Secure Communities program at the federal level that is trying to deputize local police agencies to enforce federal immigration policy. There's a whole lot of concerns about this from a civil liberties point of view, from a racial justice point of view. And as a town meeting member in the town of Amherst, I feel very concerned about it. And I'm really pleased to be working with Jeff Napolitano, whose organization has been really instrumental recently in Northampton and other communities around raising awareness about these federal immigration policies.
Ben, to set the record, to frame this issue in terms of what exists today, I'm going to ask Jeff to talk about who's for this, who's against this, in terms of the present policies of administrations along the various states that are involved and police departments. Would you touch on that?
Sure. So, I mean,
this is what we have now in place.
Yeah. We actually don't have it in place in most of Massachusetts. This is a program, Secure Communities, or ESCOM, is a program that was piloted in 2006 under the Bush administration in Boston, and nowhere outside of Boston, but just in Boston. But the Bush administration and the Obama administration were so pleased with the results of this program that now the Obama administration has pledged to make it mandatory across the country in all municipalities and all police departments by the end of 2013. So it's coming up really quickly. What the program does, what Secure Communities does, and Secure Communities, or ESCOM, is a program. It's not a law. It wasn't passed by legislation. It's a program of the executive branch. And what it does is that any time that somebody interacts with the police, anytime somebody's arrested by the police and brought in, the police, when they run a regular criminal check on somebody, the FBI takes that criminal check and then passes it through the database of suspected undocumented folks. That hasn't happened yet, but that's what Secure Communities is. So when the police are looking for criminals, what they're doing via this program is also looking to see who's undocumented. And that is going to, and has in other places, in Boston and other cities and in states that it's been implemented, that has created great havoc and turmoil in communities. The folks that are in favor of it are largely at the federal level. So you have at the local level or at the state level, you have the governors of Massachusetts, the governor of New York opting out and and the governor of Illinois too, saying this is a program that is going to harm our communities. It's going to lessen the trust between police and our population, our residents. And in addition to the governors and these states saying that they don't want to participate, we've had cities and towns across the country and counties that have said, we do not wish to participate, we don't want to participate in this program, including Northampton and Springfield, incidentally.
How do we stand locally with our police department?
Well, our police department hasn't taken official stance on Secure Communities as of yet. But they do have, Amherst Police Department does have a policy, and you can find it on their website, that states that they do not wish to and they do not do immigration enforcement in the town of Amherst. Unfortunately, if this gets implemented as the federal government has stated that it intends to do, by the end of 2013, that will violate that standing policy of the Amherst Police Department.
So this is an opportunity for the community to address this. It's not only a moral issue, but it's a question of making decisions that turn our local police department into the new Gestapo of the 21st century, in effect, for thousands of citizens. And I can't put it any more bluntly than that.
I think that's right. It's absolutely about political power. And I think what is alarming to many immigration activists, around the country is that, contrary to what a lot of people expected under the Obama administration, that we've actually seen a dramatic increase in deportations under this administration. And it makes you kind of wonder, does it really matter on certain questions like this, who the figurehead of state power is, which party they come from, when each, we're seeing kind of a progressive worsening of the situation for immigrants living in this country. And part of that process is forcing local police officers to serve federal policies. I mean, I think one of the things that really comes up is that for the ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to do their work of deporting immigrants, they have a limited staff. There are many, Jeff I think has the statistics, there's many more local police officers than there are ICE by orders of magnitude. So there's a real practical need on the part of the federal government in order to enforce their policies to deputize local police agencies.
And it's not just that they're deputizing. I mean, they don't have the capacity to check everybody's status in the country by themselves. The federal government doesn't have that capacity. And so what they're doing is they're shifting the burden onto local police departments. And it's also should be noted they're shifting the cost of doing so onto local police departments, on local municipalities, because this program does not come with federal money.
And this raises a very serious human rights issue. The profiling of hundreds of thousands of citizens and non-citizens, but who still may be eligible to have certain rights under the Constitution as immigrants to this country, and we're a nation of immigrants. So if anybody that looks Hispanic or looks Irish, because there are thousands of Irish immigrants who are not documented, but nobody talks about that.
Well, it's interesting you should mention this, because in Boston, where this program was piloted, there are quite a few Irish folks who are undocumented. I know a few. But when you look at the statistics of who have been rounded up by the Secure Communities program and who have been deported by the Secure Communities program, it's not in proportion to what the proportions of undocumented populations there are. So Latinos, for example, are rounded up and deported far in excess of the part of the population that they are.
Give an example of that. I recall about a year ago or less, they raided some companies in New London.
In New Bedford.
New Bedford. Tell us about that.
That was several years ago, and this is something that folks in Amherst and in other towns and cities that this takes place will have to look forward to if Secure Communities is implemented. This was a raid. This wasn't Secure Communities, but this was a raid where the ICE, which is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, came to town, which they would do under Secure Communities when you have somebody who's undocumented in hold. So ICE came in and they raided a workplace. It's funny because one of the reasons that they were tipped off was the company was having some problems with their labor force, and then suddenly ICE appeared to raid the workplace. What happened was children came home from elementary school, middle school, high school that day. to empty homes. And this was actually, this wasn't just one or two kids in this instance, but there were many kids, because dozens and dozens and dozens of folks were rounded up in this raid. And it was because their parents had been taken up by ICE. They had been taken up by the federal government, and they were put in detention centers. And with a very short period of time, many of them had been flown to Texas to be put into a detention center there, and many were deported as a result of this. And it was quite an outrage at the time. Even Governor Patrick came out and sort of condemned how this was carried out, and the fact that you had people just literally picked up off of the streets and then disappeared to Texas, of all places. This sort of a thing on a smaller and a more incremental scale is what you will see as a result of secure communities.
And we already had that experience, as you said, years ago.
Yeah.
This community did respond to it. There was a tremendous outpouring of support for the immigrants who were removed without any challenge, just arbitrarily removed, whether they were legal or illegal, and put into that kind of position. And that's why Patrick administration and New York governor and our local police department have taken a position that we need to separate the federal responsibility from local responsibility. And with the profiling issue being so serious, to add this additional legal dimension to the responsibilities of local police is just begging for a tremendous amount of challenge and anger and rage in the communities. And I think that our concern here is not to break laws, but to make sure that the laws are just. And so far, there has been a law, and it has not been mandatory. And so Amherst has opted, in terms of their police department position, not to participate in this program. Now, the question will come up, Ben, well, if we're violating a law, are we being asked to break a law? And the answer is, there is such a thing as the right of citizens to make decisions and to challenge and even question. This is not in place yet. So we're saying is, do we have the right as citizens to transmit to the government of the United States that we don't want to go there? We haven't violated any laws.
Right.
They're setting us up. They're setting us up so that then we could be in a position where we ultimately could be violating a law. But we're not violating a law if we do what we're supposed to do at town meeting and make decisions in a democratic process.
Well, Article 29 on the Amherst town meeting warrant is actually an invocation of existing federal law. And it's important to kind of separate the arguments and to know that there's a lot of different arguments that can all support each other, but that they're different arguments. So, I mean, we could talk about the moral argument. It's a moral outrage that the federal government, through a program not legislated by Congress, but even if it were, but still basically an administrative program at the Department of Homeland Security, would then force local police agencies to round up immigrants. I find that to be a moral outrage. But you know, another argument here that also needs to be kept in mind is that Article 29 is basically invoking the federal law that already limits what state power, meaning federal power, is able to do. And one of the regulation in this instance actually that's being invoked in this bylaw enables municipalities to limit the use to which data is put that originates in that municipality, criminal data. So like Jeff was saying, you know, regularly, this is just what every municipality does. They report to this big data.
They could do it now.
They currently report criminal data to the
criminal
FBI.
Violations. They can do it now. This does not have anything to do.
That's right.
This is
exactly.
This is the
The bylaw doesn't change what the current practice, which is that the Amherst Police Department reports criminal data to the FBI. What it changes is the next step, which is that the FBI shares its information with the database that Jeff was referring to, and that's the one held by ICE. That's the one of suspected undocumented immigrants. So what this bylaw does is it puts a legal mechanism in place that puts a constraint on the data that the Amherst Police Department is sending to FBI, so that FBI cannot send that information to ICE. So again, it's totally legal. It's within the federal code. It's just that it happens to be right now that politically different than legal. Politically, there's a tremendous movement right now at the federal level to enforce these draconian, and I would say racist, immigration policies, and to amass the full force of local police enforcement to buttress the power of the state in repressing immigrant populations.
And I would say that this is not just about immigration either. I mean, this campaign that we're working on was born out of a larger campaign that we started in Northampton that was pushing it back against another federal policy, one that's derived from the Patriot Act that basically enables domestic surveillance on a local level through what's called fusion centers. There's lots of detail to give about that, but it's not immigration. It's actually the surveillance of documented citizens of the United States. But the larger point is that there are programs that are coming down from the federal government that are draconian, problematic, that are putting burdens onto the communities, and that are repressive in nature. And the question is, how are we going to deal with it? And at Amherst, this is one way that we're proposing that this be dealt with.
Okay, I want to come back to the process now, because there is going to be a town meeting, and if you're a member of town meeting now, and you've been reelected, you got a big brown envelope which includes Article 29. Is that right?
Yeah, I have it at my house.
So what we need to say two things to our colleagues at town meeting. Number one, read the article. If you have questions about it, contact Ben Grosscup. He's listed as a town meeting member and is obviously one of the authors of this article. And the other thing is, I've already gotten inquiries from people who are not town meeting members, and their question is, what can they do? And the answer to that is, find out who you elected, and you pretty much elected all the people you voted for, because most of the people who got elected were on the list. There were very few who didn't make it.
Right.
And ask your town meeting member for more information. And there are also information meetings, I understand, by town districts in each precinct, which review some of the articles. Maybe
that's true.
Have you been a party to
yes,
that?
In late May, there's going to be late April, there's going to be precinct meetings, 5 different precinct meetings. And what this is, for people who aren't familiar with town meeting, is a town meeting is a 240 member body, legislative body for the town. And when you there's a warrant review that happened on April 10th, but late April we actually get together neighborhood by neighborhood to discuss all the warrant articles. A number of us are planning to go to these meetings, as anyone is free to do, to speak on any one of the articles on the warrant. And a number of people who have said that they want to support this initiative have committed to going to those meetings, getting themselves educated about the issues, and being able to help answer questions about those issues at these meetings. And all the other articles, of course, will also be explained there. And I think that your idea of contacting town meeting members is a great one. The Amherst League of Women Voters publishes a great list. You can find it on their website. and it has all of the updated contact information for the current group of town meeting members that was elected earlier this month.
Well, I think this session today here at Conversations is another part of the transparency that's possible in a town like Amherst. And and I always find myself celebrating this town, not only for its weaknesses but for its strengths. And there are many strengths. If 5 people have a difference of opinion, there are 20 other opinions that haven't been addressed. And so what I'm saying to the community is, this is important for those of the members of the community that say, why are we dealing with such important, big issues? And I've always said, Amherst today, tomorrow the world. There's nothing too big that we're not interested in. This is a community of questioning authority. This is a community that's creating a new society with the young people that we're educating. And so that it's expected of us that we will have differences of opinion. The most important thing, and I think that the community has begun to realize that it's not the differences, but it's respecting the right of people to hold different opinions and to respect our colleagues as they express their opinions. And as always, I invite members of the community that have another point of view on this issue to come on Conversations, and let's have a session and talk about what your concerns are, so that by the time the community has to address this issue, we'll really have a town meeting. That started before town meeting. So if you're interested in this subject, get in touch with me. If you're interested in finding out where these precinct meetings are being held, contact your newly elected town meeting members.
Town Meeting Coordinating Committee has all that information. People can also email me, stokingthefires@riseup.net, and I can send back
That's
the
too
information.
Complicated.
I can send back that information.
That's a different revolution.
The town,
give us one that's more to
We have a website for the campaign that's called it's preservingcivilrights.org. www.preservingcivilrights.org, and you can get in touch with us that way.
Let's stay focused.
Sure.
You want to repeat that again?
Sure. It's preservingcivilrights, all one word, .org, and that's the website for the campaign. And what's also should be mentioned is Ruth Hook, who is the petitioner of this article and who has been working with us on this from the very beginning.
Okay, and a lot, yes.
Well, I was wondering if I could ask Jeff a question, which
Sure.
is that if you could explain, Jeff, kind of this bylaw and how it is different than other attempts that have been made to address the threat of secure communities.
Right. So, as I mentioned earlier,
We got about 2 or 3 minutes.
Sure. Springfield in the summer and Northampton in the fall passed what are called opt-outs of secure communities unanimously, actually, in both Springfield and Northampton. It was a little bit remarkable that we got it unanimously in Springfield, but those were resolutions that indicated the desire of the cities to not participate in the program. It was not until later in the fall that we discovered this legal mechanism. As we've been talking about, what we're talking about is not civil disobedience. We're talking about invoking a legal mechanism, an existing federal regulation that would bind the federal government to respect Amherst's wishes with regard to secure communities. So this is not just a resolution, a non-binding resolution. This is a bylaw which will invoke a regulation, which is a legal mechanism to legally prevent secure communities from being implemented in the town.
And as I said before we began this program, the question of legality is a matter of position. If you come out of slavery in America, and or women coming out of bondage in America, the whole history of evolution of the democratic process is to challenge legally and by other means the immoral, illegal, unjust actions of previous governments and administrations. So I don't think we should be intimidated. Right now everybody's saying there's too much government. And from my perspective, it's not a matter of too much government, but there's too much interference in the rights of individuals. And I think we could get together with Tea Party and others on that issue, I hope.
I think that's probably right.
Jeff,
Yep.
any final words?
If folks are interested, on Thursday night, we're actually having a trivia night at Food for Thought, in which we're going to be, in a sort of fun way, explore all the issues and talk about the bylaw and talk about immigration and that sort of thing. So at 7 o'clock on Thursday at Food for Thought, come on down.
Ben?
I think the thing that we need to remember as we do this work is that we are building a political movement, and we are invoking legal mechanisms to advance that political movement. But I think the political movement that we're trying to build is one based on constitutional rights, racial justice, and a belief that people should be free to live, and that it's unacceptable to have the kind of tyranny and fear and isolation that so many immigrants are faced with, having to deal with on a daily basis, that we need to take assertive action as a community to stop that. And when we build the political power based on those ideas, we're going to defend those ideas, and we're going to be effective.
And I want to add just one note to that. We are demonstrating political power every time town meeting meets, every time the select board meets, every time our committees meet, every time the community says we've got concerns, and we express those concerns by whatever means. And that's the great thing about Amherst. A plug for Amherst. So if you want to see town meeting in action, check your the radio schedules, check your TV schedule, and also check the local newspapers. And check with your town meeting members. Let them know, now that they're elected, that we know they exist, and let's make them responsive to the concerns that we have in the community.
As a town meeting member, I have to tell you, it's rare to get a call on a specific article, but it's great when you get a call.
Well, that's what I meant earlier about when I said if you don't like some of the things that Obama is doing, don't blame Obama, blame yourself, build a movement. It takes a movement to make an FDR, it takes a movement to make a Social Security, it takes a movement to create rights for Americans, all Americans. So with that wonderful note, I'm all stirred up.
Yeah,
I don't know where I'm finding this energy.
We need to get you a soapbox, you know.
I've been on a soapbox, can't you tell? It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
Jeff.
Anytime.
As always, Isaac.
Ben, and see you next week. Thanks to the staff, and thanks to the student volunteers who do a terrific job. Good night. See you next week.